All right, in this video, we're going to learn how to add and subtract polynomials, which is Module 9, Lesson 1 for my class. Adding and subtracting polynomials is benchmark AR 1.3, which is add, subtract, and multiply polynomial expressions with rational number coefficients. So this is the warm-up we did today in class. And let's get started with our notes. So first, we have to know what like terms are. And like terms are terms that have the same variable and the same exponent. So some examples are we have 3x squared and 5x squared. They have to have the same variable x and the same exponent 2 and 2. We also have 2y to the fourth and negative 6y to the fourth. Same variable, same exponent. If they do not have the same variable and same exponent, we cannot combine those terms. When we add polynomials, we are going to combine the like terms by adding the coefficients. So the coefficients, remember, are just the numbers that are in front of the variable. Okay? The exponents do not change when we're adding or subtracting our like terms. Exponents only change when we multiply or divide. So just remember that if I had 2y to the fourth and I was adding negative 6y to the fourth, the y to the fourth would stay the same. Only the coefficients change. Okay? So in our first example, we're going to do it two ways. Here in our notes, we're going to first do it by grouping or horizontally, which is the way I prefer to do it, and then I'll show you an alternative method. So we have 3x squared and 5x squared. Those are like terms, so I need to combine those like terms, and I get 8x squared. Then I have a positive 10x and a positive 18x. Those are like terms. 10x plus 18x is 28x. Then I have a positive 10 and a negative 7. So to combine those two terms, I'm going to get a positive 3. So put it all together and I get 8x squared plus 28x plus 3. Notice that it is in standard form, meaning my highest variable term to my constant. And I cannot do anything further to simplify this because I do not have any more like terms. Now, there is another method. And this is just another way to add, and some teachers or some students prefer to add this way, which we call vertically. So if we're going to add vertically, we're going to take this whole equation, 3x squared plus 10x plus 10, and then we're going to take the 5x squared plus 18x minus 7, and now we can add them like we used to add our numbers or equations previously, so in lower grades. So 3x squared plus 5x squared, we're still going to add that. 10x and 18x, and a positive 10 and negative 7, and I get 8x squared plus 28x plus 3. Notice that I did have to make sure that my like terms were lined up vertically before I added them together. Now, when we subtract polynomials, remember that we need to distribute the negative first. So here we have a negative or subtraction sign outside of this parentheses. So what that means is that I am subtracting every single term. So if we're doing this horizontally, then we're going to distribute that negative and get a negative 6y squared. Distribute that negative and get a negative 1. Now we're going to start combining our like terms. So 12y squared minus 6y squared, and we get 6y squared. There is not another y term, so we're just going to leave the positive 5y alone. And then we have negative 3 and our new negative 1. So negative 3 minus 1 is a negative 4. So we get 6y squared plus 5y minus 4. Again, this is in standard form and cannot be simplified any further. Now, if I wanted to do this the other way and do it vertically, I can do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm still going to line up my like terms. So I have the 12y squared plus 5y minus 3. And I have to make sure to leave this space here because there is not a y term in this second parentheses. So I'm just going to leave it blank. Now, remember, I am subtracting. So I am going to subtract 6y squared from 12y squared. And I'm going to subtract 1 from negative 3. So I get 6y squared plus 5y minus 4. Whichever way you prefer to use, whichever way is easiest for you to keep straight is the way or the method that I want you to use moving forward in your practice. We're going to do a few more examples. These first two examples I'm going to do horizontally or by grouping. And the next two examples, 3 and 4, I'm going to do vertically. Okay, so here I have 3x cubed plus 4x cubed. Add those two together and I get 7x cubed. Positive 2x squared and a positive 6x squared. Combine those two terms and I get a positive 8x squared. Then I have a negative 10 and a positive 12. Negative 10 plus 12 is a positive 2. Bring it all together and I have a 7x cubed plus 8x squared plus 2. And that is my final answer. Okay, this second example, I am subtracting. So I need to distribute the negative first. So my positive 4x to the fourth is now going to be a negative 4x to the fourth. And my positive 2x squared is now going to be a negative 2x squared. Okay, so 6x to the power of 4, I'm going to combine that with negative 4x to the power of 4, and I get 2x to the power of 4. Positive 3x squared and a negative 2x squared. Well, 3 minus 2 is going to be just 1 or a positive x squared. And so my final answer is 2x to the fourth plus x squared. Again, this cannot be simplified any further because my variables are the same, but my exponents are different. Okay, now these next two, we're going to use the other way. We're going to use the vertical method. Okay, so I have 2y to the power of 3 and 5y to the power of 3. I'm going to make sure to line those up vertically. I have a positive 8y squared, which I do not have one over here on this expression or this polynomial. So I'm going to leave that blank. And then I have a negative 5 and a positive 8, which I need to make sure to line up. Okay, now that I've lined up my terms vertically, now I can add those terms together. And 2y to the power of 3 plus 5y to the power of 3 is going to be 7y. Oh, sorry, that should be a 3 plus 8y squared plus 3. Just ignore that. That should be a 3. And I can, there we go. All right. Unclick that. So now we're also going to do example number 4 using the other way to subtract. So remember, we do have the negative. And so we're going to still try to group our like terms. We have a 10x to the power of 3, a 2x squared, and a 7x squared, and then we have a negative 14. When I line those up vertically here, but now I'm going to remember that I'm subtracting, so I'm going to apply that negative sign or flip the signs of that second polynomial. And now I can combine my like terms. So 10x to the power of 3 minus 10x to the power of 3 is going to give me 0x to the power of 3. Then I have a positive 2x squared minus 7x squared will give me a negative 5x squared. And a negative 14, I have nothing to combine it with, so it stays a negative 14. So my final answer is a negative 5x squared minus 14. Okay, these last two examples are with fractions. And using fractions vertically would be rather difficult, and it's not how we would typically add or subtract fractions. So I'm going to continue to use the grouping method here or horizontally. And again, because I am subtracting, I'm going to distribute that negative first. So you'll notice when you're distributing a negative, everything that's inside the parentheses, the sign is going to flip. So the positive 3/5 become a negative 3/5. A negative 3/4 became a positive 3/4. And the negative 4 became a positive 4. Now I'm going to work on combining my like terms. I have 1/5 x squared minus 3/5 x squared. So I'm going to get a negative 2/5 x squared. I have a positive 1/2 x and a positive 3/4 x. Well, in order to add these two fractions, we have to have common denominators. So 1/2 is going to become 2/4. 2/4 plus 3/4 is 5/4. If you struggle with fractions, I recommend using a calculator. And then -7 and a positive 4, I'm going to get a -3. So my final answer is -2/5 x squared plus 5/4 x minus 3. Then we have one more example with fractions as our coefficients. Fractions are rational numbers. So I have 1/2 y squared plus 1/4 y squared. Well, when I add those together, I'm going to get 3/4 y squared, because remember 1/2 is the same thing as 2/4. And 2/4 plus 1/4 is 3/4. Then we're going to combine that -10 and the -5, and I get a -15. So my final answer is 3/4 y squared minus 15. Now go ahead and work on your practice and submit your answers in Canvas and see if you're correct.